The sliding doors hissed open with a sharp sound. Lena stumbled in, clutching her burning hot little boy against her chest. His face was flushed, eyes half closed, tiny hands limp. The hospital lobby was harshly lit and cold. Behind the reception desk, June, a woman in her late 20s with sharp eyes and an expensive manicure, barely lifted her gaze. Lena hurried forward, her voice shaking. "Please, my son, he's not breathing right. June leaned back in her chair, lazily tapping the keyboard. She shot a look at Lena's worn sneakers, the fraying strap of her bag, the cheap hoodie slipping off her shoulder. Then she turned to the young nurse beside her and whispered, not bothering to lower her voice enough. "Bus riders again. Bet she can't even spell insurance." Lena's face burned with humiliation. She shifted her weight, trying to keep her composure. "I just need someone to see him. Please, he's really sick." June sighed dramatically, standing up as if it was the greatest effort in the world. "Name." Lena Brooke. "My son is Jamie." June typed with deliberate slowness. "Insurance. I don't have one right now." Lena admitted, voice cracking. The smirk was instant, curling at the edge of June's mouth. "Yeah, well, you'll have to wait. People with coverage come first." Lena's hands tightened around Jamie's tiny body. "But he's burning up. Please look at him." June pulled out a laminated sheet and tapped it with a perfectly polished nail. "Policy. No insurance, no priority. That's how it works." A well-dressed man in a suit brushed past Lena, coughing lightly. June's attitude shifted instantly, smiling polite, ushering him toward triage without a second thought. Lena blinked in disbelief. You just took him in. You didn't even ask if he had insurance." June shrugged, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Maybe you should think about getting a real job. Then maybe you could afford real care." For a long moment, Lena just stood there, frozen. The ache in her arms from holding Jamie felt unbearable. His little body shuddered against her. She clenched her jaw, blinking back tears. "I'm not leaving. I don't care how long it takes." June rolled her eyes and scribbled something on a clipboard. "Suit yourself, emergency chairs are over there. Try not to block the hallway." Without another glance, June turned back to her computer, typing furiously as if Lena had already disappeared. Lena staggered to a cracked plastic chair in the corner, sinking down as Jamie whimpered in her arms. She pressed her forehead against his burning temple, whispering desperately, "Hang in there, baby. Mama's right here. Just a little longer, please." The clock on the wall ticked mercilessly on. Minutes dragged by like hours. Jamie whimpered again, a weak, rattling sound that sent panic clawing up Lena's throat. She looked around, nurses bustled past without a glance. The intercom buzzed overhead, but nobody came. Her voice cracked through the noise. "Excuse me, please, my son. He's getting worse." June didn't even flinch. She kept tapping at her screen, her face set in bored indifference. A young nurse, Kyle, standing by a mobile cart nearby, looked over, frowning. He hesitated, catching the desperation in Lena's voice. His gaze dropped to the child in her arms, his training kicking in. Kyle crossed the floor quickly. "Hey, what's going on?" Lena almost sobbed in relief. "My son! He can't breathe right. He's burning up." Kyle leaned in, his expression shifting as he saw Jamie's labored breathing, his flushed, sweaty face. "We need to get him looked at," Kyle said firmly, shooting a glance at the reception desk. "June, why isn't this child triaged yet?" June didn't even turn around. "Because she's uninsured. She can wait." Kyle's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, lowering his voice, but not his intensity. "June, he's in respiratory distress. We can't ignore that. It's against protocol." June finally swiveled her chair around, raising an eyebrow. "You knew here, Kyle. We don't waste resources on people who can't pay. You want to explain that to admin later." Kyle's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He looked at Lena. Really looked, and something in her trembling shoulders, her raw, pleading eyes made his decision. "Forget admin," he muttered. "I'm calling it." He turned to grab a triage wristband from the counter. June stood up sharply, blocking his hand. "You so much as touch that file, you'll be written up. You think it's worth your job." For a moment, the two locked eyes, the bustling hospital fading around them. Kyle's heart pounded. He knew the risks, but Jamie let out a thin, choking wheeze that shattered his hesitation. Kyle broke away, grabbed the wristband anyway, and knelt in front of Lena. "Hang tight, ma'am. We're getting him in." Lena's eyes flooded with gratitude. Thank you," as Kyle snapped the band onto Jamie's limp wrist. June hissed behind him, "You just killed your career, rookie." Kyle didn't even glance back. "If doing the right thing kills it," he said, his voice low and fierce, "then it's not a career worth having." He grabbed the emergency call button from the wall and slammed it with his palm. A sharp alarm rang out across the lobby. Instantly, doors swung open, nurses rushed toward them. June stood frozen behind the desk, her smirk wiped clean off her face, and Lena. She held Jamie tighter, whispering through tears, "Hold on, baby, someone finally sees you." The emergency alarm echoed through the lobby, sharp and jarring. Doors flew open, nurses in scrubs swarmed out, some rushing toward Kyle, others hesitating, thrown off by the chaos. At that exact moment, the glass entrance slid open again. Dean stepped inside. Tall, composed, the hospital's chief of medicine wore the exhaustion of a brutal day, but his stride was sharp, his gaze scanning instinctively. He stopped dead when he saw Lena. Time seemed to warp for a moment. Dean's breath caught. His eyes widened in shock as if he were seeing a ghost. "Lena," he said under his breath, almost disbelieving. Lena looked up, confused, clutching Jamie tighter. She didn't recognize him, at least not yet. Dean crossed the lobby in quick strides, bypassing the commotion. "What's happening here?" His voice cut clean through the noise. Kyle straightened up immediately. "Sir, this child is critical. He's been waiting too long. I initiated emergency triage." Dean's brow furrowed, turning sharply toward the reception desk. "You initiated. Where was reception?" June, pale but defiant, stepped forward. "I followed hospital policy, sir. She didn't have insurance." Dean's hand shot up, silencing her. He turned fully to Lena, crouching a little to meet her tear-streaked eyes. "Ma'am, I need you to tell me, how long has he been like this?" Lena swallowed hard. "Since last night. I tried to bring him earlier, but the bus I just got here." "Please, he can't breathe." Dean nodded, his voice gentling. "You did the right thing coming. We're going to take care of him now." He stood, his voice suddenly iron again. "Get a crash cart here." Now he barked at the nearest nurse. As staff scrambled, June tried to interject, her voice dripping with panic. "Sir, she didn't even check in properly. She's not in the system." Dean whirled on her, his voice low and deadly calm. "Not in the system. You mean you didn't put her in the system?" June's mouth opened, but no words came out. Dean took a slow step closer every inch. The commanding figure. "I don't care if she came in on a skateboard, a bicycle, or crawling on her hands and knees. She's a mother with a critically ill child." He pointed sharply toward the back. "If you ever prioritize paperwork over human life again, you won't just lose your job. You'll be banned from setting foot in another ER in this state." "Am I clear?" June's lips trembled. "Yes." "Dr. Dean." Dean didn't even waste another second on her. He turned back to Kyle. "You did the right thing, son. Stay with me. Let's move." Kyle nodded, relief flashing across his face. Two nurses lifted Jamie onto a gurney, attaching monitors swiftly. Lena grabbed Dean's arm, her voice desperate. "Please, please, don't let him die." Dean looked at her, really looked, and something ancient flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Memory. You're her daughter," he whispered, barely audible. Lena frowned, confused. "What?" But there was no time. Dean gave her hand a firm squeeze and barked to the team, "Get respiratory ready, move it." The gurney sped down the hall, Lena running beside it, her heart pounding, her mind whirling in confusion and fear. Behind them, June sank into her chair, face ashen, watching her world start to collapse. Kyle was still shouting over the nurses when another voice cut through the chaos, sharp, commanding, "Step aside." Heads turned. A man in a navy coat and hospital badge strode through the doors, his presence slicing the air. Dean Kyle straightened immediately. Nurses shifted back like tides pulling away from shore. Even June stiffened behind her desk. Dean's eyes locked onto Lena, slumped in the chair, clutching her son. He froze. For a second, the busy hospital faded into nothing but memories. Sirens screaming the wreckage of a crushed car, and a woman with tear-streaked cheeks pulling a boy from twisted metal. Dean blinked hard, snapping back. His voice was tight, urgent. "What's his status?" Kyle answered fast. "Severe respiratory distress. Febrile. He's slipping." Dean moved instantly. "Get a crash room ready." Now June tried to step in, plastering on a professional smile. "Dr. Dean, with all due respect, this patient hasn't been processed yet. No insurance." Dean turned slowly, cold fury radiating from him. I said, "Get a room ready." June faltered, her lips parting, but no words coming. Dean ignored her, crouching in front of Lena. His voice softened, a complete reversal from moments ago. "Ma'am, you're with me. Your son is our priority now." Tears blurred Lena's vision. She tried to form words, but only managed a broken whisper. Thank you. Dean gently touched Jamie's forehead, feeling the scorching heat. His jaw clenched. "Let's move," he barked at Kyle and the team. As they rushed Jamie through the hall, Lena staggered to her feet, following. June remained behind, glaring, her nails digging into the desk until her knuckles turned white. But Dean wasn't done with her. He turned sharply. "And you." His voice cracked like a whip. "After we save this boy's life, you and I are going to have a very serious conversation." June opened her mouth to protest, but Dean was already gone, moving with purpose down the corridor. In the emergency room, nurses swarmed like a well-rehearsed dance. Kyle checked vitals, calling out numbers. Dean worked swiftly, his hands steady, even as his mind raced. Lena stood just outside the door, watching in helpless agony. Kyle leaned toward Dean, whispering between checks. "Sir, permission to speak freely." Dean didn't look up. "Speak reception. They told me to leave him. Because of money." Dean's face hardened. I figured. A pause. Then low enough that only Kyle could hear. "That woman, the mother. She saved my life once. She doesn't know it, but if she hadn't been there that day, I wouldn't be standing here." Kyle stared, stunned. Dean met his eyes briefly. "We don't leave people behind." Kyle nodded, swallowing hard. Inside the room, Jamie's chest finally began to rise and fall with a steadier rhythm. His tiny fingers curled weakly around the oxygen mask. Lena pressed her forehead to the glass, sobbing silently in relief. Dean stepped out a moment later, wiping his hands on a cloth. "He's stable." "For now," he said quietly to Lena. "We'll keep him monitored. He's tough, just like his mama." Lena covered her mouth with both hands, collapsing into the nearest chair, shaking with gratitude and exhaustion. Dean crouched beside her, his voice low. "You don't have to worry about the cost. Not today. Not ever again." Lena's eyes widened, tears spilling down her cheeks. Why would you?" Dean's smile was small, but it held 1,000 memories. "Let's just say kindness circles back." He stood straightening his coat, and now, Dean muttered dark thunder rolling into his voice again. "I have a front desk to clean up." Dean leaned against the wall outside the emergency room, rubbing his temples. The adrenaline was still thrumming through his veins, but now something heavier sat on his chest. Lena approached slowly, Jamie sleeping soundly in her arms, the oxygen tube taped gently to his nose. "Doctor." She started, her voice hoarse. "I don't know how to thank you, Dean." Shook his head immediately. "No. If anything, I should be thanking you." Lena frowned in confusion. "I don't understand." Dean studied her face, tired, worn, but fierce with love. The same fierce heart he remembered even if she didn't realize. He spoke quietly, almost reverently. 20 years ago. There was a car accident on the 405. A woman pulled a boy from a burning wreck, stayed with him until the paramedics came, saved his life. Lena's eyes widened slightly. "My mother used to tell me about that day. She was that woman." Dean smiled, something aching and bittersweet in it. I was that boy. The hallway seemed to shrink around them. Lena gasped softly, clutching Jamie closer. But how I mean, I never thought Dean chuckled under his breath. A rough, worn sound. I was too young to really thank her properly. And your mom? She disappeared before anyone could get her name. Lena's throat tightened. She didn't want praise. She said, if you can help someone, you do it. No matter who they are. Dean nodded slowly as if hearing the echo of a long-forgotten lesson. She saved me. She gave me another chance, and now I can give it back. Lena wiped her eyes. Overwhelmed. I wish she were here to see this. Dean's voice softened. Maybe she is. In some way. They stood there a moment, the chaos of the hospital swirling around them, but not touching their small, sacred space. Then Lena whispered, barely audible. I thought maybe no one saw us, no one cared. Dean's gaze was fierce. I saw you. I see you now. A nurse came rushing down the hall, clipboard in hand, but paused when she saw Dean's expression, and backed away, sensing the weight of the moment. Dean straightened up, voice growing harder again. And I'm making sure everyone else sees you too. Starting with that woman at the front desk. Lena shook her head quickly, alarm flashing in her eyes. You don't have to cause trouble. Dean's jaw tightened. This isn't about causing trouble, it's about doing what's right. His voice dropped, lower steel threading through it. People like her, they think kindness is weakness, that if you don't look a certain way, you don't deserve help. I'm going to make sure she learns otherwise. Lena clutched Jamie tighter, her heart thundering. And for the first time that night, a small, fragile hope flickered inside her. Dean stepped into the waiting area, his eyes scanning the room. Nurses and patients scattered, but he had one target, June. She was behind the reception desk, tapping her pen absently, eyes flicking between the computer and the clock on the wall. Her eyes didn't even rise as Dean walked straight toward her. Lena and her son are to be prioritized, starting now. Dean's voice cut through the air like a knife. June glanced up slowly, her expression bored, unfazed. That's not how it works here, doctor. You know that. She leaned back in her chair as if this was just another day, policy's policy. Dean's eyes locked onto hers. There was no smile this time, just raw authority. I don't care about policy. June raised an eyebrow, a sharp, cruel smile forming on her lips. You think you can just waltz in here and change everything? That's not how it works. Dean. Dean didn't flinch. He stepped closer, his voice lowering cold. Here's how it works. A life is at stake, and you let a mother watch her son suffer because of a piece of paper. His eyes flashed. That's not something I'll tolerate. Not in my hospital. June's expression faltered for a fraction of a second, but she quickly recovered. You're crossing a line. You know what happens when you make enemies in this place. Dean took another step forward, leaning across the desk, his voice lowering to a dangerous whisper. Do you think you can intimidate me with your threats, June? He shook his head. I'm not here for power games. I'm here because a child was dying and you chose to ignore him. June shot to her feet, now matching his intensity. Her voice rose defiant. You don't get it, do you? If people like her walk in here and think they can just bypass the system, it'll all fall apart. I follow the rules. That's the only thing keeping this place from becoming chaos. Dean scoffed. Chaos. You call leaving a sick child to wait orderly. You're so focused on rules that you forgot why they exist in the first place. To help people. June's fingers curled into fists, her face reddening. You're making a mistake. She spat, her tone venomous. You think you can just waltz in and undo everything. You think you're better than the system, huh? Dean didn't back down. His voice was ice. The system. The system is broken when it lets people like you dictate who lives and who dies. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. And people like you should never have power over anyone's life. A tense silence hung between them, thick with hostility. Dean's chest rose and fell slowly, but his eyes never wavered from hers. June was silent for a moment, her eyes flickering with something like fear, but she quickly masked it with another fake smile. You think I'm scared of you? You think anyone here cares about your personal vendetta? She glanced around the room, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You're nothing. Just another doctor with too much time on his hands. Dean straightened up. His words, however, were sharp, every syllable cutting through the air. Let's see how long your rules hold up once everyone hears about this. I'll make sure the entire board knows what's been happening here. His gaze was lethal. And June, you're done. June's eyes widened in disbelief. You can't. Dean turned, cutting her off with a single gesture. I can, and I will. He turned and walked away without a second glance, his footsteps echoing in the now silent room. June stood, frozen, her hand still gripping the edge of the desk. Her face was pale, her jaw clenched, but there was nothing she could do. As Dean exited the building, his mind was clear. He had made his choice. He had stepped into the line of fire, and he wasn't backing down. Inside, June was left standing at the desk, staring after him, realizing too late that her carefully constructed walls of power had just cracked. Lena sat in the small waiting room, her hands still trembling as she held Jamie, now stable, but still unconscious. The weight of the past few hours hung heavily on her, and the silence around her felt like a fog. The only sounds were the beeping of machines and the distant murmur of nurses and doctors in the hallway. Then the door opened. Dean stepped in his face, a mix of exhaustion and determination. He approached Lena slowly. His footsteps measured his presence grounding. Lena looked up at him, her eyes red, but there was a flicker of gratitude behind the tiredness. Is he? Her voice was barely a whisper. Dean gave a small, reassuring nod. He's stable. He's breathing easier now. We'll keep monitoring him overnight. But for now, he's out of danger. Lena's shoulders slumped with relief, a shaky exhale escaping her. Thank you, doctor. I don't know how I can never repay you for this. Dean smiled softly, but there was a sadness in his eyes that Lena noticed. You don't need to repay me, just... He hesitated. Just know that you're not invisible. Not here, not anymore. Lena's brow furrowed, confused by his words. What do you mean? Dean sat down beside her, his voice softer now, as if the weight of everything was finally sinking in. I went into this field because of people like your mother. She saved my life when I was a kid, and now I'm doing the same thing, saving others doing the right thing, even when the system is telling me not to. Lena blinked, understanding slowly dawning on her. You were the boy in the wreck. Dean nodded, his gaze falling to the floor. Yes, and I never forgot it. I thought I could walk away from it, but it never leaves you. You can't just forget someone who gives you everything when they don't have to. Lena's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were different, thick with gratitude. My mother always said that if you could help someone, you do it. She would have been so glad to know that you're still doing that. Dean met her eyes, the weight of his past and present colliding. She was a good woman, and now I get to do right by her, by both of you. Just then, the door swung open again. But this time, it wasn't just nurses and doctors. The hospital administrator, a tall, stern-looking woman named Sarah, stepped into the room. Behind her, June was standing head low, her face pale and tight with shame. Sarah's voice was firm, but there was a certain softness to it. Dean, I've already talked to the board. They've seen the report and they agree June's actions were inexcusable. We're moving forward with a full investigation. Lena's eyes widened in shock, but Dean's expression didn't change. What happens now? Sarah looked directly at June, who stood frozen by the door. Now we do what's right. June is suspended pending an internal review. She will no longer have a place in this hospital. June's face was a mask of disbelief. This isn't fair, she muttered barely above a whisper. I was just following orders. Dean stood up, his voice low but powerful. You weren't following orders, June. You were following your own sense of control, your own rules that have nothing to do with saving lives. June tried to argue, but Sarah's gaze was unyielding. You've had your chance, it's over. Lena watched it all unfold, the weight of everything that had happened settling in her chest. She felt no satisfaction in June's downfall, only a quiet, lingering sense of justice. Once June was escorted out of the room, Sarah turned to Lena, her face softening slightly. Miss Brooke, I'm truly sorry for what you went through today. We will do everything we can to make this right for your son. Lena nodded slowly, the emotions still raw but slowly being soothed by the kindness in Sarah's eyes. Thank you. It means more than you know. Dean stepped back, his work done for now, but his presence lingered. If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to call me. Lena looked up at him, a quiet understanding passing between them. You've already done more than I could ever ask for. Dean smiled this time with more warmth than before. It's what your mother would have wanted. As he turned to leave, Lena sat back, Jamie safely in her arms, the world outside moving forward, but for once she didn't feel so alone.